Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Transgender Show. I'm your host, Emily. I'm very excited tonight to welcome our guest, Justice Renée. Justice is the person who made the introduction to Jay, Exodus Cooper, the person you just saw on Keep Livin', and brought that into the Transverse family. And beyond that, has quickly become a very integral part to the behind-the-scenes part of the Transverse. You may not know it, but you've seen her handiwork already. Justice works as a systems engineer at Target, helps amplify diverse voices through Secular North Productions, and raises her 2 kids with her partner. She shares her story with others to give hope and move communities forward through the din of conversation. She found freedom and acceptance and a path forward from the hate. Without any other delay, let's bring in Justice. Oh, that's me. Hi, Justice. Renée.
Hey, Emily. Hi. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
It's so great to have you here. Just a quick, thank you again for everything that you've already been able to do for the Transverse, helping keep us secure, helping us a lot with basically IT stuff on the back end, and then a lot of work with getting us organized and getting us set up with content management with management systems of keeping us, like I said, keeping us organized. It's been great to have you along already, and I think you've been a major part of the Transverse for maybe a month now.
About 4
months.
I started. So the beautiful story of this is there is an amazing person in chat, and you know her as Jen Giggles. Jen introduced me to the Transverse to come to be a part of a future program, possibly. And while in there, I saw you guys having a mod meeting, and I had to stick my nose right in it, and you allowed me to. And then I just kept, kind of like the camel with the tent, sticking myself a little bit further and further under the tent until I'm all the way into every little aspect and facet of the Transverse. And I've been doing that for 4 months now.
That's true. That is true. You have been with us. You came in as a participant in the All on the Table, and then just kind of gradually worked your way in, and you're like, oh, I can help here. I can help you with this. Let me help here. It's been wonderful.
I love it.
Let's first off, thank you everybody. Thank you to everyone who has stayed with us in the chat through Jay's show and now here on the Transgender Show. If this is your first time here, this is our interview show where we talk about our stories of transition. And the point of that is to help show people in the trans community that they're not alone, that your experience is not unique, you're not out there on your own, and also to show the things that we have gone through, that we've struggled with, and how we've overcome them, to prove to you that you can do it. We're here for you, but here's an example of someone who has made it through some of the things that you're going through. We've got all of the mods here. Basically, the entire Transverse staff appears to be here. Kari, Danny, Anashra, Jen Giggles, the aforementioned Heather, Shy, Queen of No Pants is here as well. That's awesome.
Kayla, I love it.
Hello. Midvani, yes. And Vanguard Fit. Thank you so much for joining us today. That's apparently a friend of yours. They started with Justice !
Oh, awesome.
I think Elena might still be with us. But everybody that's still hanging out, that's awesome. Let's go ahead and jump into starting to ask about your story with the kind of overarching point here. How do you identify?
Well, I identify as she, her, use female pronouns. And that's an interesting one because when it comes down to it, how do we all identify? I try and identify as myself and explore that, but I definitely feel much closer on that spectrum of things, more on the binary.
Then I like to ask the follow-up after that is my favorite one to kick us off into the real meat of things. How did you choose your name?
Oh boy. So some people won't always share their dead name, but I'm going to because it kind of has a story and it kind of ties into this. My parents named me Justin. They named me Justin following after Justin Martyr, an early church father, the early Christian church father out of the. I'm trying to remember. All of a sudden, my head's completely blank. But the whole concept of giving your whole self, giving your whole everything to God meant everything to my family. And so they chose Justin to fit that mold. And they raised me very much in the concept that I would do everything I can as the firstborn to live my life in such a way to bring honor to God and in their specific form of religion and their specific form of thought. So, as I neared the place of transitioning, looking back at my past, looking where I came from, some of the treatment of LGBT communities, not only towards the treatment of myself, but then also the treatment I did toward the LGBT community, and trying to also keep my name kind of close to similar so it's easier for people as they're talking and they're communicating and we're connecting with people. I went with Justice. Justice means a lot to me. And more importantly, is my middle name. My middle name is Renée. Renée in French means reborn. And so tying the two together, we have Justice Reborn. I was a former fundamentalist minister preaching hate, anger, and just absolute vitriol towards the LGBT community. But through some very amazing people who showed me love and kindness, who reached into my heart and reached into my life and showed me that there's so much more and I can embrace who I was from the very beginning. Um, I've now moved forward and I've been reborn to bring justice to my trans family, to each and every one. That's my hope. And that's where my name comes from and why I drive it so much that way.
Yeah. And it sounds like in all of our talks that is sort of what drives your passion towards helping the community and doing everything you can to bolster and to support all the trans folks.
Absolutely. If we're going to make the world a better place, we have to step forward. We have to step out without fear, even though I'm absolutely terrified of coming out from behind the camera. But it's important to us to show that we're normal. This is who we are. It's the shows. It's not just, the talk show of like what we're doing here where we tell stories and we kind of get into some of the scarier stuff of the stuff. It's also being able to do Valkyries on the table. You're showing what it means to be human, and it means everything. So I love it.
That's what I love too, is finding the people that not only want to help the community and want to be part of the Transverse because of that, but buy into the whole list of things that we're trying to do with not only, providing information and, that the connection to people who are like you through stories like this, but also just normalization in, here are just trans folks doing fun things that have nothing to do with being trans. It's not, a big point, or there's nothing real deep, or, it's not advocacy work every single time we're on here. There's a lot of just, let's have fun as trans people and just show the world that we're just normal people doing cool things.
Exactly. And that is advocacy. That is the whole concept of changing the zeitgeist underneath, right? We are literally letting people realize and see who we are as individuals. And that is very powerful advocacy work, sometimes even more than these talks, because it helps people connect with individuals in a way that they can't when you're telling a story that they'll never understand.
So I'm going to go a little off script here, and just kind of ask you right off the bat, how have you found the different passions? Coming from that strict religious family where you were pushed, perhaps forced, to step out there and to advocate for the beliefs that were there. How have those two different passions compared for you now, taking this and basically what you're doing is trying to push back and reverse the things that you were advocating for before?
So I I'm trying to think of the good way. That's a really good question. And I'm going to use that phrase to kind of bring it on in. And okay, so the way I see it and the way I understand it is very similar to being left-handed. So in my earlier period of time, I was forced to fit a mold that I did not fit in any way whatsoever. I used immense amount of energy to hold that. Just like my partner, my beautiful partner, she's left-handed. And in the world, she's run into so many things where she has to live the life of being a right-handed person, even though she's not. She's left-handed. And I tried so hard to fit the mold of what it meant to be this fundamentalist, this Christian, this man that could be the epitome of the person that I was being raised to be, but that never was me from the very beginning. And so I look back, and I mean, we can get into it in the sense that, you know, there was a period of time I almost died due to my blood pressure spiking over 170 over 130. And that whole situation, my whole body and everything about who I was running under massive amount of stress. And as soon as I said, you know what? No, I'm done. I'm done fighting. I'm done running. I'm accepting who I am, and I'm moving forward in loving relationship and accept in kindness. My blood pressure went to 110 over 76 was what it was today. And that's the huge difference when you think about the comparison. Um, it didn't fit me. The energy and the excitement and the drive and who I am as a person, how I just poof, right out there. Yes, that's never left. But now I'm not doing it as the only way to silence the scream in the head. I'm doing it because I have freedom, and it means something to me to finally be connected to who I am as a person.
That's beautiful and so interesting that it was the same thing. Uh, you were dealing with who you were at your core in both situations, but one of them was you were dealing with it by fighting it and pushing it down and just doubling down on the religious rhetoric
Yeah.
versus now accepting yourself. It's beautiful that you've been able to get there and that you've got the extra bonus there of, you know, it greatly improving your health.
It is, yes.
So then, back to the story of your transition. When did you first come to the point where you identified as transgender?
So that would, when I first started to step into the role of saying that I was trans. I've always been trans. I've always dealt with, ever since I hit puberty, I've held a certain amount of scream in the head that finally silenced when I got estrogen or fuzz, right? It depends on who you're talking to. But it was about 38. It's 37. It was about 3 years ago. I finally hit the place where I was almost every night wishing to die and struggling with all the feelings internally. And all I had seen of what it was to be trans was porn and the misrepresentation by my parents. And that sure wasn't me. But I ran into some Reddit accounts and some other stuff, which really helped me understand that this is just a normal part of life. And that started a year-long process. Well, actually, it was closer to 36, 37. It's been a bit. It's been a blur the last 3 years, let me tell you. But it was in 2019 that I went to my partner, and it was 2019 of August 2019 that I said, "Hey, something's different here." And she's like, "Yeah, I know something's different, but what is it?" And it started down this whole directional path of conversations and struggling to be open and honest about how I felt. There was a little bit of struggles and issues with the whole journey, which definitely took a lot of time and a lot of process. But we're in such a such a beautiful place. So I would say, yeah, about 30, 38,
Mm.
37, 38. Yeah.
And then were you able to look back from that and pinpoint some clues, some breadcrumbs from your youth that that now were illuminated with your hindsight to be like, oh yeah, those were the signs that I should have seen earlier on and should have led to this diagnosis earlier.
Yeah, 37, 38 was when I finally said, yes, this is what the case is. But I had experimented and I had fallen down the rabbit hole many times. When I was a little kid, I definitely was much more feminine and connecting, but I realized very quickly I sang soprano in the church choir all through my all the way till I was 12 years old. And then I had this situation. We were at my grandparents', and my grandfather loved music, but did not like the factor that I sang soprano. And I'm about to let my voice change. And so they were like, "You're going to change your voice. You're too high. You're too high. You're too high." And they drove it down, and I had to lower my voice to fit in with my family at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it became a whole thing. And when I hit puberty was the big thing because number one, my body didn't fit the way that I felt and the way I was understanding connection of who I was. And on top of that, there was this fuzz or scream. I call it a scream. I'm very type A. I'm very driven. And so I used the scream as this energy in my head that I dealt with. I got into cross dressing in my teens. I struggled at Christian Bible college to, during the summer of one of the years before I went back to actually not transition because I was like, I had seen the behaviors, I had seen the connections. I felt more connected with the trans people that my parents said were horrible individuals. Even felt more connected with the porn actors that were trans individuals than I did with being a male. But that was just to be that person in my family meant you had to, you could, it wasn't safe.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't an opportunity. And I mean, there's a reason I have a tattoo on my arm. You can ask me, we can talk about that in a bit, I guess. But there were a lot of little things and a lot of big things that definitely I look back on and yep. And I just kept saying I could power through them. I can power through them,
Mm-hmm.
and that didn't work.
So was there like one specific thing that cracked your egg then? That was the eventual, culmination of that signal noise that had been bugging you, the scream.
Um, so I feel like we're missing a whole bunch of stuff, and I apologize. So I'm gonna kind of do a little bit of a not gonna monologue, but I'm gonna say a little bit of stuff. So at 13, I was in the ministry. I started in the ministry at 13. I gave my first evangelistic sermon, working with Child and Evangelism Fellowship at the age of 13, and I dedicated my life to following my belief in God. And the reason I started throwing myself so heavy into that was because of that scream and was because of that pain and that drive to try and drive it down. My father made it very, very clear that anyone that was a part of the LGBT community not only deserved death, they were going to go to hell. And maybe even it should be the government's job to do it. And so I learned very quickly that when I struggled with these internal monologues, it got to me. And I got deep into cutting. And one of the things I cut into my arm is an A. And when I got on in college, I got away from the cutting by making a promise to myself that I would never live past 35 because everything was so painful that I said I was going to follow the role that my parents had outlined, which is I was named Justin. I was named to be this ambassador, and I was going to be this missionary over in Indonesia. And I would do everything in my power to go out and be the best missionary possible, and the best missionary that would die a quote unquote martyr's death and epitomize the name that my parents gave me. Um, and due to a myriad of reasons, I left Christianity and I reached 35 and I wasn't dead yet. And I got into this place where almost every night I was wishing for it. And the blood pressure spiked, the whole thing spiked, and everything along those lines. And the thing that cracked my egg was saying I can't do it anymore. But I love my kids and I love my partner, and I'm going to live. And as soon as I said that I'm going to live, the only way I knew how to live was to stop fighting. I don't know if that makes sense. We just skipped over a humongous amount, but I try to make it quick.
No, and it's your story. We can revisit and dive in as deep as you want on the parts of your story that are the most important for you. I think again, the purpose of this is to find those pieces that resonate with other folks and show them there's someone else that has gone through this. There's a way through it. You're not alone, and you can survive it. This last birthday was my 45th birthday. And I did I had on the Transverse a suicide and depression special on my birthday, where I interviewed a counselor. And the reason why that was a tie-in was because of the exact same thing for me, is I had a date. And it was not my 35th birthday, but it was my 45th. And for a long time, that was my end date. And, it was just very interesting to get to that date and be at such a great place, because I'd been out for, 2 or 3 years. I was working on this. And it was great to be at a place to turn that into something that could potentially help people. So, yeah, it's definitely something that a lot of us have gone through in thoughts and ideations, and even setting a date. It's just such a great thing for us to be able to be past that, and I'm so proud of you for having that strength to put yourself and your family first and do what needed to be done, and to fight through everything, because I know it was because of my personal experience. I know it's daunting. I know it's very hard.
But it means everything, and you're willing to give up everything to be who you are, and it gives you the chance to move forward. Which is why what you're doing with the transverse is so important. We're opening doors and gateways for people to have conversations and to dig deeper into this stuff, not only to normalize it for parents and for rest of society to understand that we're normal and this is just part of life, and we're part of the blueprint. We're not just the sides. We are a part of the blueprint, but we're also, right, this is for the person struggling, right, to realize that they have a place, and they're not weird. They're not broken. They are themselves, and they are beautiful in who they are.
I think Jay might be rubbing off on you a little bit. I love the similar messages of the love, and the self-love, and the love that we can share for everybody.
So Jay has a big part in that coming out too, and I guess I put that in there. So Jay was interning at First Unitarian Society, and I was struggling and doing this whole thing at night, and they and I had this sit down, and I was just like, how the flip can you be so willing to wear all of these things and do all these things and just be open? And they just were real with me, and I was like, I just want that. I just want that. I want to be connected. I want my freedom. I don't want to have to be constantly worried about am I going to hurt my kids? Am I going to do all these things? What's going to happen? It was all about then all of a sudden I had the freedom to step forward and to embrace it. And then, to bring my family together. And it has brought so much connection. I have more of a deeper relationship with my kids and my spouse than I ever have ever had through that transition.
So we covered, how you got to the point of knowing that you were transgender, how you got to the place where you made the decision that there was no other choice, that this was your path forward. So you got through the hard part there, and then comes the hard part of accepting that about yourself, and coming to terms with that identity, and really really finding peace with it. What was that journey like for you?
Very painful, very stressful, and very scary. Because you're, coming from a fundamentalist background, how do you tell your partner that you're trans? Right? How do you tell your family? How do you tell your kids? um, even the factor of how did I, the constant back and forth. I'm not really trans. I can get through this. I can make it to my 40s. I can make it to my 50s. Just get the kids through college. Just get these things. The rationing, the bargaining, the fighting through the battle and discussion. But we made it through it. It was some very amazing conversations with my spouse that really helped me connect it. And we kind of started down the line of, well, maybe I'm gender fluid, maybe I'm non-binary, to embracing and accepting it. And during the time, Erica, I was very concerned about the factor that, well, is she going to leave me if I tell her too much, if we go in down this path? And she gave me a ring at Christmas time. It's a Claddagh ring, and that Claddagh ring means loyal. It means friendship, and it means love. And she's my best friend, and it meant everything. And we've had our struggles, we've had our fights, but doing it together and transitioning together in the sense of she's been there through the whole process. It's given me that freedom of being able to address it and move forward.
What were some of the things that you had to offer her in those conversations to make her feel confident in your process, and that, this wasn't happening to her, that this was something that she was participating in?
We went to a couples therapy, couples for trans therapy, which was beneficial to connect us with community so that she could see there was others. It was more about conversations. So the thing with Erica and I is we've been best friends all along. We got married because she was my best friend. Um, it wasn't all the other stuff. It was we got married because she was my best friend. And we've been able to keep that friendship and that connection. I can count the amount of drives, lots and lots of drives we would go on to have conversations, to touch base, to see, hey, where we're at. And me just doing the word vomit of here's my emotions, here's my thoughts, here's my process. And then she just listened and we talked through it. And then she would tell me what her thoughts were. We had a lot of bargaining towards the beginning of, well, we got to wait for this specific time. We are going to hold off for a year before we tell these people. I didn't fully. There's still some people that don't know. Most now do. Um, I think it was back basically. I think February was the last time. March, April of this last year that we finally were able to fully open up to a much larger audience, and that was because we moved to a new town, and that was in a safer space, and we weren't dealing with some of the issues that we were dealing with in our old town.
Mm-hmm. Now, coming from the background you did, the assumption is that you lost a lot in family when you came out and began accepting yourself. Was that the case for you?
Yes, that was. My parents never accepted who I was. They cut off contact almost instantaneously. We've lost contact with most, if not all, of our family members. My brother, that's not the case with. My brother has still stayed connected with me, which I'm very, 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 very thankful for. And a couple of my cousins, and which are just absolutely amazing people. I'm so thankful for each of them that have seen it through. Um, it means everything.
That's wonderful that you were able to find some family members in there that that did stick with you. Sorry about that, Draco. Thank you for the note here. I've been trying to keep my eye on the levels, but yeah, it looks like I need to readjust a bit. Okay. Wow, I'm maxed out, but I think I should be pretty close to her now. Were you prepared for that, you feel, based on your experience and your knowledge of them? Was there a part of you that you knew this was the outcome?
Yeah, I knew this was the outcome. I hoped it wasn't the outcome. Um, and I feel like I'm drawing you right back into that very beginning part because I think, coming into the whole thing of the coming out and accepting the journey of where I'm at right now, um, we kind of have to have some more of that understanding. Um, I apologize. I am going to first say I apologize. You were doing all this beginning stuff, and I jumped through it so fast. I didn't tell you all the other stuff. Do
It
you
doesn't
mind if we
have
go
it doesn't have
back?
to be linear. It's boring if it's linear. If we jump
Oh
around,
yeah.
it's really good. So yeah, anything that you feel is important to share
Okay.
about that journey with your family, and just so basically you knew this was probably going to be the way it was. You hoped it wouldn't.
Yeah.
How did you approach this? I would say that would be one of the most difficult conversations you would have about this when you're coming up basically to a brick wall and but you hope. Um,
Yeah.
how
So
how did you approach that conversation?
So my parents, my dad, if anyone understands what young earth creationism is, my dad was a leader in the young earth creationist movement. He put on conferences for young earth creationism, and young earth, and in science Christianity, science creationism, blah, 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 all through the 80s and 90s. They also took me a lot of times to the Capitol in Salt Lake City, and we would have protests and conversations and things along those lines. I learned very, 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 very quickly that being trans is definitely not accepted. I learned in church that it definitely was not going to be a positive. It meant hell. It meant damnation. It meant everything. And so I knew when I went to my parents to say, hey, guess what? The thing that you thought was horrible, that's me, wasn't going to go over very well. And it didn't. I approached it. My mom has severe dementia, and they're a little bit in their older ages right now. And so what I did is I approached it from more of a text to my father because the last thing I wanted to do was create a situation with my mom panicking or freaking out where we couldn't have a proper conversation. And I messaged my dad and I texted him, and he mentioned a couple things things like, it's a phase. This is this isn't true. This isn't real. And then just a brick wall. Um, I had to finally, over Christmas, completely separate contact with them because the communication from them was extremely negative in many aspects. It was consistently trying to bring me back into the same old style of where I was coming from. And they never once used my right names or anything along those lines. And so I had to finally say I couldn't do it anymore. And so I reached out and I said, you know what, we're going to have to, if you get, I'll be open to you. If you ever want to come, I'm open. We'll connect with you in any way whatsoever, but I'm not going to accept any more of these blanket letters you send that are kind of bombs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Trigger bombs. So on the other side of that coin, did you have people in your coming out process that accepted you in a way that surprised you, or that you weren't expecting any support from?
I wasn't expecting my brother. That was someone I did not expect. But when I called them and I explained it to them, they're like, "Okay, sounds good to me. Let's keep going." I was like, "What? This doesn't make any sense to me. You are fully entrenched in the Libertarian Party. You are very much into these certain ideologies and ideologues that we came from, but the benefit is that they spent a lot of time abroad, and they spent a lot of time down in South America, and they've had exposure, which is part of the reason I do what I do. Is seeing that level of exposure can change their philosophy and change their mind, open the door to connecting with them. That's how we change this world. That's how we change it. It's not through picking up guns. It's not through fighting. It is through changing the hearts and minds, through consistently changing the underlying zeitgeist, underlying narratives.
Mm-hmm. Well, I kind of like that it was experiential. It was your brother's experience in the world and other cultures that opened them up to other ideas. Now I'm kind of envisioning the Transverse experience, an interactive exhibit where people can come in and and get their minds changed experientially. I love it. In this process, in this period of your life, did you have community or a particular role model to turn to talk directly with or to help guide you?
No. When I started transitioning, I did not have anyone specifically. I saw the trans community on Reddit that I kind of looked at and glanced at, but it was really confusing and really struggle. As I dealt with the internal, how do I do this? I then reached out. In the beginning, I didn't. Towards the middle, I did. So when I finally got connected in, I was able to make some connections with the Minnesota Transgender Alliance. And that helped me build some of that foundation where, I had an awful experience with the first therapist that I went to. I went to a therapist that I thought that was going to be brilliant. They had a quote unquote, they were a trans therapist. They even said they were a trans couples therapist to help people through their marriage while they were transitioning. It's like, ooh, this is perfect. This will help both me and my partner.
Yeah.
And it didn't. They drove a wedge between me and my partner in many ways. They also kept, when I said, okay, so am I trans based off of the data here? This is who I am. Their comment, well, you're not homosexual, and you're not willing to leave your wife, so I don't think you're trans. And
wait, what? A trans therapist that doesn't understand the difference between gender identity and sexuality?
That's what totally blew my mind, because then I got to another therapist and I was like, hey, wait, this one advertises directly to the trans community and they're using like these archaic practices, right? Why is this coming in? And then my next therapist did a massive job of helping me through a lot of stuff. That therapist got me to the place of suicidal ideation again, and it got me back into this horrific place where I was even like, do I go into DIY? Do I jump into all this stuff just so that I can prove that this is who I am? And I was able to get away from her, and I got to a different therapist. And the other therapist was like, okay, well, sounds good to me. Let's keep going. And just took me through it and worked with me. And it was the community that I created with the Minnesota Transgender Alliance, having a therapist that not only didn't tell me, oh yeah, that's not who you are, but oh yeah, this is not only where you're at, but let's talk through it. Let's work through you. Let's actually deal with this stuff, and understand. It changed everything.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the worst things that can possibly happen. It was very similar to something that I had happen. I had a therapist that was kind of pushing back on me. And when you have a person of power or that's supposed to be giving you guidance that you're looking to for guidance, and they're challenging you on the very thing that you're challenging yourself on, it really can derail progress.
I wanted some challenge. Like I wanted people to say, "Hey, let's have a good dialogue. Let's have a
Hmm.
good conversation." But it was a lot of gaslighting, which was the problem that I kept dealing with. Of how do you deal with this? She said, "Oh, go to the doctor and get hormones." So I went and I scheduled an appointment with the physician. I got her recommendation to go to the physician. We went and we talked to the pharmacist, and just before he prescribed it, she pulled support. And I had to go back for another month and a half before then she gave support again, for getting HRT. And that time is when COVID hit. And when COVID hit, the hospital shut down. And so here I was, oh, yeah, you can have HRT, but there's no place for you to now get it. And then she dropped me and said, we're not working with you anymore. And that's when I found a different therapist. And it changed everything to have someone that actually, yeah, challenged me for where I was at, challenged my thought processes, but didn't gaslight, didn't, that whole, you're broken narrative. It was this, who are you? Let's actually get to the root of this. Let's
Yeah.
find out.
So, what was your experience in trying to find a community to belong to in the beginning?
It was rough because I'm not really good at community in a lot of aspects. I struggled to, how do you connect on Reddit? How do you connect in these social forums? And I don't do very well in those forums.
Hmm.
Um, it was honestly some of the Zoom meetings with the Minnesota Transgender Alliance that I was able to get actually connected with some people. And then just throwing myself into the work. Um, I found a lot of support with some cis allies that just connected and helped me. They're the people that work with Secular North with me. And we threw ourselves into, how do we move forward and how do we connect? And I was able to talk with them and we were able to work through some of the concerns. I, while it was great to have the connections that I did with the Minnesota Transgender Alliance, it was honestly joining Transverse that really helped. And I'm 18 months, and those mod meetings with Danny and team have meant like the world to me.
Okay, so that answers the next question of when you found community that resonated with you. Um, so, you're relatively new. How has I'm sorry, I'm trying to gain my composure back. That one got me.
Yay!
Um, how has that helped you to find that confidence in your own identity and help move you forward in your transition? Having a community that you feel you truly belong to.
Well, it's given me the ability to then go forward and do stuff. So I have been fighting to get surgery, and not nothing big, but just going through and just getting an orchiectomy. The whole issue with the first doctor and the letter issue has carried over, where providers see that this happened with this one, asking questions, and then they go, well, maybe we need a different level of support. And so, insurance, one time I gave letters to them for getting the surgery, and insurance goes, well, this letter's expired. It's year past. Well, it's a year past because you literally put it a year past in the handling of this. Oh, and this letter's not good enough because it's coming from this. I just finally got my second letter over Christmas. And knowing that I can talk to friends and family and talk to Danny and talk to the people in the mod rooms and have the conversations has allowed me to go, okay, so like I was terrified. I hate talking to doctors, but it's like, okay, well, I can do this. And I don't ever tell anyone that I'm doing this stuff, but it helps like nobody's business to know that I'm not alone in this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't expecting tonight to affect me this much. I was completely knocked off my feet by the things that Jay said earlier. Sorry, I keep using a hard J. I think you're still in the chat there, Jay, but I'm going to try and get back to the soft ZH sounding J. But yeah, sorry not to make it too personal. This is about you, but
I love it. I want to know more about you.
well, there's a 3-hour long interview out there that's in mothballs that you can maybe you can edit that one and we'll get it up soon. Maybe we should do a follow-up, but it's hard to do something, and I don't know, have you found this in secular North, that you do your thing and the purpose is to help people and that's what you're going for and you're gung-ho about it and you're excited about it. But then when you hear stories of people telling you directly the ways that it helped them, I can't help but be floored by it. It's me doing a thing. I have a lot of wonderful people now that are doing it with me, and it's amazing. But I still struggle to accept the fact that it is affecting people. It is helping and changing lives. It sounds so silly to say it even. So yeah, I'm going to stop talking about me and how this is affecting me because this isn't about me.
No, I love it.
Let's get into the difficult question because it's a very ethereal one. We've talked about what you've gone through in your transition. As you kind of step back and look at it as a whole, what does transition look like or mean to you? And in an ethereal, from an ethereal perspective.
So my username is left in the leaves. That's we talked about my name, Justice Renee, but my username left in the leaves is the whole concept for what transition means to me. And to explain that, I have to give a little diatribe, and I'll try to keep it very short. When I was 13 and I was struggling with who I was and starting to deal with the whole pounding and noise in the head, I read the Scarlet Letter. I was 13, 14 at the time, and I was struggling with my gender, struggling with who I was. How do I accept this person? And I outbursted in a sense, right? I couldn't understand where I was and why I was at where I was at. And so to deal with the internal shame and to try and drive it down, I got deep into cutting. And I cut an A into my arm. And
I was wondering if it was Scarlet Letter related. That's
yes, it is. Yeah. And I could not believe the shame that who I was. There's a quote in the Scarlet Letter. Here she said to herself, the torture of her daily shame would at length purge her soul and work out another purity, that which she had lost, more saint-like, because of the result of martyrdom. And so when you asked me about the division point between who I was and everything along those lines, when I was 13, I threw myself into Christian work and ministry and working for the ministry because of that exact goal. if I could work out a different purity in my whole soul, if I could change who I was through this aspect of stepping forward and being deeper, more spiritual, more connected, this is who I am, I could destroy the internal desires and the pain. Maslow's hierarchy of needs comes in here, right? We deal with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Where you have food and you need all these type of things. Well, gender identity fits right in there. And you can silence gender identity problems if you focus at a level higher than that, right? You can kind of silence some of those underlying needs by focusing on something so much stronger. And so I held to that whole concept that this is my life or death. And when I would struggle with things, I would get into cutting and I would cut the A and I would cut it over and over and over. And by the time I got into college, that turned into it turned into a scar and I could see it. When I transitioned, I got a tattoo on my arm and it means the absolute world to me because, and actually, you know what? I think this is probably the right time to do this. Here, let's see how well this shows up on the camera there for you. Maybe it won't. Never mind. It doesn't matter. We can try and show it this way. I actually set up a second camera to show it. But so what I did is I took that mark of shame that drilled into who I was and my identity, that trying to drive and silence the scream, silence who I was, silence everything about me, and hide myself under this mark of shame. Let the world not know who I was. Let the world not understand what I felt because I couldn't share it. It was too shameful. It meant that the world would have to know who I was. The day that I stepped forward and I said, I'm going to transition, I let it go and I dropped that mark and I turned that mark into a badge of pride. I now owned that mark. There's a quote from the Scarlet Letter. She removed the Scarlet Letter, taking it, threw it among the leaves. The stigma gone, she heaved a deep sigh, in which the burden of shame and anguish departed. Oh, exquisite relief! She had not known the weight until she experienced the freedom. My A on my arm now, the tattoo that I have here, signifies as the badge of where I'm now at. I have embraced the shame. I have embraced the connection, and I have left that pain among the leaves. I have left it there so that I can now live more fully and more connected. So when you ask me, what does transition mean to me? It means relief. It means freedom. It means I can have a connection with my kids, my two kids, in ways that I've never had before in my entire life. I can see them, I can feel myself, and I can understand who I am. Transitioning saved my life, and transitioning has given me now a life that I'm excited to see till I'm 80, 90, or however old I get, as long as it's older than 35, and we're good.
Well, yeah, and I love that you had this belief that the way to silence the one thing was to find that purity and that deep connection to faith by forcing yourself into the religious aspect. And it wasn't until much later that you realized that the purity came from accepting the identity that you were pushing down. That's where you found it.
Just acceptance. It changes everything.
Trying to go through the rest of the questions here and see which ones are still sort of pertinent and relevant now that we've gotten to such a deep place. We don't have a whole lot of time before the break, but I think I would next want to ask you, stepping a little bit more back, how have your goals shifted as you've moved across your journey? Have were there things that you set out initially once you accepted yourself and had looked at the trans community for, the steps of your process that shifted?
It's a journey, and we're on it, and we're just accepting and learning each other and being willing to grow, and that's where I'm at. When I started out saying things like I'm non-binary or gender fluid, trying to hold on to some semblance of who I am and where I'm at. But now I've been able to embrace who I am, and yeah, I mean, what is next? I'm excited. I don't know, right? And so that's part of the thing is I think, it's so easy for us to try and look at journeys as these straight lines, but they never are. They're connections, they're relationships with others. They see how we can shape and shift and mold and move with each and every one. And we can step forward. And where am I going to go? I have no clue. But what I do know is it's a journey, and I'm excited to be on it, and I'm excited to have the friends that I have, um, and the relationships that I can see that allow me to move forward in ways that I never could previously. I don't know if that gets to your question
Yeah,
totally.
yeah, absolutely. What do you do in your day to day if you're struggling with identity or struggling with dysphoria, those sorts of things? What do you do to find validation in your identity? To find, Justice Renee in the mirror or in your heart?
Well, I look to see, some of it is meditation, some of it is conversation, a lot of it is relationships, and embracing those relationships. The relationships I have with my partner allow me to connect in a way that allow justice fully to feel and connect. And that isn't, like even in just living my life, like even in connecting with my parents, right? My parents were very dismissive. They were very brutal with the way that they treated me. But I was able to see that this is who I am and to be able to embrace it, right? Every day I step forward and I go, okay, what's next? How am I going to do this? I have my coffee cups. I have my things that I enjoy doing. I enjoy, I this is me. I love to dance. I love my flags. I love to have relationships with people. And so when I struggle with dysphoria, and I do a lot, what do? I try and remember why I did what I did. I look at this. I look at where I've come. I mean, it's hard because there are times, right, where you go, is that just a man in the mirror? Right? Am I just fooling myself? Right? Is this just wrong?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, does it really matter? At the end of the day, I have a connection with people in a way that I've never had. And this has allowed that to happen. And science is great. I love it. I've been working with Trans Pride Conference, which you now know a little bit more about. We'll have to talk about at some point, right? Um, but I have been able to, dig into the data, and we can show over and over and over that trans individuals and who we are 100% of the part of the blueprint. We're not mistakes. This is part of the blueprint. We can show. We can talk about neuroplasticity. We can talk about weight. We can talk about the weight of white matter. We can talk about the weight of gray matter. We can talk about how we are who we are, right? And why we are. We can talk about the delineation or the tree of delineating choices during infantile development and how that actually changes nature and nurture and how these things fit. But no matter how much I argue and discuss what the science says, at the end of the day, when I look in the mirror and I go, is this real? I go, I can see and I can know that the relationships I have with people are so much more full when I accepted who I was as a person. And inside, I know this is who I am. And I'm thankful for who that person is. No matter how much I want to try and lie to myself and gaslight myself and say it can't be real and it can't be true, this is who I am and this is where I come from. And regardless of what science says, and science is definitely on our side and has shown the data over and over and over, this is me. Accept me for who I am because I want a relationship with you as a person. Love me in my humanity.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. I think that sort of answers one of the questions coming up. What is the favorite thing you've learned along your journey? Is there something else you'd like to add for that one?
What is my favorite thing that I've learned since my journey?
Mm-hmm.
Well, besides the factor that I like earrings and I like all these things, it's connection, it's relationship. And I will harp on that all day long, and how to relate to those things.
Big softball question before we get to the final one for this section and the most important one to finish on. The softball is there anything you feel you've been able to accomplish because of your transition?
I can live. A lot more than that. So I went from I'm a software engineer, one of the lead engineers at Target. And I have been working in cybersecurity. I've worked on all over the places. I had my worst year in performance evaluation, performance review, performance handling before I transitioned. And when I transitioned, the scream disappeared. My blood pressure dropped. I'm alive. And when that scream disappeared, it allowed me to focus. And I literally had my best year and was named top performer of the infrastructure division at Target, following one of my worst years ever because I transitioned. So that's where I'm saying is when you can actually accept who you are and move forward, it changes the game. Your freedom of being able to think and to be able to move forward allows you to then embrace things in a way and see things in a way. Being trans has allowed me to understand and relate with people across the spectrum. There's things that I understand about what it means to be male, and there's things I now understand what it means to be female. And there's things that relate to being trans that don't touch either of those two things. And it allows me to have a lot more connections with people. But I will tell you, if you're trans, you need HRT because boy, does it shift your brain and allow you to be able to focus and do things that you've never been able to before.
That's a good thing to have learned as well.
Oh yeah.
What advice do you have to pass on to young or closeted trans folks out there?
It's not always going to be easy. But what's important is how you live and accept yourself. The only person at the end of the day that you're talking with inside of yourself is you. It's not your parents. It's not your spouse. It's not your kids. It's not your friends. At the middle of the night when you are in bed, the person you have to deal with is you. And there is a level of freedom that is found when you embrace who you are as a person and go on the journey of exploration of how do we understand who we are? How do we move forward with this? And regardless of if you find anyone that can be there, it changes everything when you have some people that can be there for you and help you along the way. because then you have friends that can accept you for who you are, and you see that from an external perspective. Be you, be fierce, be free, because when you look at yourself when you're asleep at night, it's you. When you look at yourself in the mirror, it's you. Just be you. And there was so many of us. We'll come around. We'll wrap our arms around you, and we'll do everything we can to make your world better. That does not say that things won't be hard. They will. And it is for so many people. There's no way I could have come out. I talked with my partner about this the other day. We were having a long conversation. I wish beyond a shadow of a doubt I'd been able to transition when I was a kid. But there was no way. Even had I shown any signs of it, it would not have ended well. Mm-hmm. And I would have lost so much. But I did transition, and now that I did transition, it did change everything. And the important thing is just be you. I love you all it is. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I like to add to that when we talk about concerns or regrets with the time that we transitioned. Oh, I wish I'd transitioned earlier. And I truly believe that we transition when we are able to, whether it's our environment or internally, what we need, what the place we need to get to be able to accept it within ourselves to do it. And yeah, a lot of that comes from our environment and society. But it happens when you're ready for it. So you can't hold that as a thing negatively against yourself when you transitioned and if you should have done it sooner. You did it when it was right for you and when you were able to and when you felt safe to. And that's what's most important.
Justin got me to who I am now, right? I mean, he got me through all the stuff with my family. He got me through some of the stuff. He brought a lot of hell with him, and he brought a lot of horrific stuff with him, and a lot of damage that he did to other people. But I have to be thankful for where I got to and who got me there. And now I'm free. Mm-hmm. And now I'm out. And I have left my shame in the leaves. And I now wear who I am and every aspect of who I am as a symbol of pride. It is my badge of honor. No one can tell me I'm not trans. You can't shut me up. Because I'm here. I'm here to stay.
Well, I love that honoring who you were before and understanding that person was flawed. The person was flawed and had a lot of incorrect ideals. But in a lot of ways, that person carried you through to where you are today and deserves that respect in a way. I love it. All right. I think we're ready to take a break, get a little bit of a stretch. When we come back, we're definitely going to have to have you do a twirl and see that dress top to bottom.
Oh boy, this is scary. Oh, I don't think we said this. So today is my 18-month anniversary on HRT.
Happy 1.5th birthday.
Yeah, we timed that right. I'm so thankful. This is the dress I wore on my first day getting HRT, and I've worn it every 6 months.
How beautiful is that, chat? Let's get some more of those trans hearts or any heart that you've got in your emotes. Let's fill the chat with those.
Yeah.
Someone had mentioned earlier, I'll just go ahead since the next part is where we opened it up to comments anyways. Someone said that they always, or Mimi said that she always just assumed that the A stood for awesome.
Some people go, it must be atheist, because I'm also a pretty strong atheist in some areas, and I'm more a humanist than an atheist. But they always say that, and I'm like, no. Let's explain this. There's a lot more to it, and I am so thankful for it. The tattoo artists, they are amazing, by the way. They're here in Minneapolis. Jackalope Tattoo is just absolutely fabulous for the trans community. That is the group that they focus specifically to help is femme and non-binary and gender diverse, and they do an amazing job with their tattoos.
Okay, we'll need to get that in the resources in the resource hub ASAP. Side note on that tangent there, that that is coming in a big way very soon. Very soon. We're with Justice as our in-house de facto IT person has helped me figure out how to get that uploaded to the website. And another person, Angela, has helped. Mama Pistachio, who you may know, has helped create a form, and so that will be posted publicly, so y'all can put in all of the resources that you've found, whether it's medical, whether it's pharmaceutical, whether it's just companies that are trans friendly and help. Just those trans safe havens. So that will be showing up very soon. I'm concerned with my wording now, so I'm trying not to repeat that. We'll be back very.
Emmy,
What's that?
I was just going to say, Emmy is just absolutely fabulous. Happy Emmy's the one who did this, and she focuses on scars and how to reclaim those scars.
Ooh.
And it's just, ooh, yeah, and actually make something out of the scar that actually then you are able to hold. And so she works a lot with trans men and dealing with their, top surgery, and how do you deal with reclaiming that?
Wow. Such beautiful work. We'll get into that a little bit more when we come back after a break. Let's start where we pretty much ended up there, where we left off. We were talking about your tattoo and your wonderful tattoo artist.
Yeah.
And there is more after the A, it appears. Does the A form the first of a word?
Does that come through well?
Yeah, just hold on a second. I'm still working on it. There we go. Alive. There it is.
Mm-hmm. So, Emmy, they are an amazing non-binary tattoo artist, just absolutely fabulous to work with. So what we did is we took the A, and the place where I carved the A into my arm is literally right on the A. And we took the A and we turned it into a live. And so what it happens is the scar is the crack. So here I was trying to hide everything, but I can't hide it. And out of the crack grows the flowers. My feminine side pours out of it because that is who I am. It is my reality. It is where I come from. And instead of hiding it, we've now allowed it to flourish. And by allowing it to flourish, it has made me alive. And I have a reason to live and a place to have freedom in who I am as a person because I have now accepted that. And that has given me that freedom.
Let's go ahead and get into the audience questions. I have the rest of the stuff I have is about secular north, which we'll give you a chance to dive into in a little bit. But let's get into the audience questions now. Jess asks, is Jess still hanging out here? I saw her earlier. I didn't know if she's still hanging with us. But our wonderful Jess says she's curious which college you attended, if you're comfortable sharing. She knows a variety of families and friends who have attended a few. And I guess she's speaking of religious colleges.
So that's a story in a nutshell, and I'll keep that brief. I never graduated high school, so I was homeschooled my entire life. Except for a stint in sixth grade where I went to public school, and a small period of time where I went to for one semester to a private school. I was kicked out of the house at 17. I never graduated. I never got through my senior year. The way I was able to finagle it is I found so I had been diving myself. I was going to do everything I could to be in the ministry, right? And so I had been reaching out to colleges, and I'd been talking to different places out there. And I went to a unaccredited Bible college out in Wyoming called Frontier School of the Bible. In a small town called LaGrange, out with it's 150 people. But To be honest, like I didn't have a place to go back to. So my parents had kicked me out at 17. And so I lived in my car for a couple days and I signed into school. I put a resume in and an application in to attend, as a thing that I'm going to do this. And um, I guess I did it. So
So yeah, that's a part of your story that I guess we didn't really get into, because we know when you accepted yourself as trans and had to come out to your family,
yeah.
and then you this last year you needed to cut that tie. What was it at 17 that where they pushed you away?
So that's where it's a little. My parents believed so much in we were in church 4 to 5 times a week. We were doing ministry. We were doing all of these type of things, and they didn't want me in public school and very little in private school because of the education I would get around that stuff. They were absolutely terrified of sexual education. They were terrified of evolution. They had deep concerns of those things. I went back and I took some tests to see where I actually sat. After I got out at 17, I have a seventh grade level education. And I had to, after I finished Bible college, and once I finally reached a place where I could no longer hold to the tenets that I had believed, I went and I started to study everything I could. And my baseline at that point was seventh grade. And I read everything. I would go and study everything. And I did get a second degree. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Information Technology from Western Governors University. And I used work credits to get it, which is the way I do almost everything. All about practical is kind of where I sit. But yeah, so my parents kicked me out of the house because I said I wanted to go back and get a better education. So I knew I wasn't getting a bad education. I wasn't getting a good one. I was ending up spending most of my time in the libraries trying to read books and not knowing how to understand it. And my parents said the best thing for you would be to go to Bible college. So we're going to kick you out of the house.
Oh, so from their perspective, it was a tough love thing of like,
Yep.
this is going to force you into the thing that you need to be doing anyways.
Correct. Because it was, again, the firstborn, you sacrifice your firstborn. That's the philosophy.
Oh, so this was their sacrifice. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Sheesh. All right. Positive comment. Mimi says, you're my new favorite example of someone going from one religious extreme to the opposite end.
So I want to not be that. Mimi, I absolutely love your sentiment and I love where you're at. So but I want to throw something your way. I've been a little bit, you can go very quickly from one side of fundamentalism to another side of fundamentalism. And this is an actual very important thing that I have dealt with so many times with fundamentalists who leave Christianity. They are fundamentalist in the way they hold philosophy, and then they go straight to fundamentalist atheist. And they don't understand or spend the time to go, why do I believe what I believe? Where are the questions? Can we have a little bit of grace? Can we have a bit of love for the people around us? No, they hold into hardcore. They take that same fervor that they had with religion, and they now use that in their new style. It's not a belief because they're saying that there is no God, but they then use that in their new style. So I try and take it to the next level, which is a good friend of mine challenged me. They said, the way you're going, you're just going from one extreme to the other extreme. And it caught me off guard. And so I tried to go, okay, so how do I know what I know? And develop a form of curiosity. And this is what fundamentalism does not have. Fundamentalism loses the curiosity, and you lose the connection with your world and willingness to ask questions because you embrace something so hard that you're not even willing to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be willing to be wrong and be willing to question. I am absolutely 100% ready and excited for anyone to show me and help me find that there is a God out there. I would love that. I have never found the evidence for such a thing. And so I went from one to there. And so I'm sitting here waiting and open, and I'm curious. I want to find out. Please, let's talk. Let's figure this out together because there's so much I don't know. I'm an idiot in so many areas. So Mimi, I hope I didn't go from one to the other. I hope I found a little bit of a change where I can have embracing and connection with humanity. But I so much appreciate your thing because I am so thankful that I did go from where I was.
Mm-hmm.
I hope Mimi, does you like that?
She did. She says you're making it difficult for me now to take lewds right now. Apparently, she's doing some more of her selfies that she's been posting on the social recently.
I love it, Mimi. Keep it up.
No, and I can see where that sentiment comes from of like, you know, being part of the fundamentalist religion, and having that background that is against LGBT and trans, and then becoming trans and accepting yourself. There's an opposition there to what you were before, even though you haven't swung so far over that you're still in the same side, just but focusing on something else. You're still obsessing over something crazy.
Well, in 2015, I went completely opposite too. So when I finally said I can no longer believe this and I can no longer do this, I became an angry atheist in a lot of aspects.
Mm-hmm.
And I went on the warpath and I started doing a lot of things. It was a Christian friend of mine and some atheist friends of mine that challenged me and said, "Why do you believe what you believe? Are you just trading one form of belief for another belief?" And that coming from an atheist really hit me hard, um, and made me have to go, okay, so let's understand why am I actually challenging this? And that's where I want to understand. The world is great. Let's learn as much as we can and let's explore it and find out as much. And let's be curious because there's so many experiences out there that I don't understand. And maybe one of these days, I can learn more about Mimi, and Mimi can explain what she knows, right? And I can get to know, Dana a little bit better, and I can get to know you a little bit better, and then I can have a little bit more insight into the world that you understand that I don't. And we can have curiosity together and explore what it means to be human.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I've been kind of looking for a place to bring in this bit of my day. I had a really difficult conversation this morning with somebody who I interviewed on this show, and it took them about a year to come back to me and tell me, shit, no, more than a year, and tell me how something that I had said or how I'd reacted to their story hurt them. And hurt them deeply and kind of turn them away from trans communities and trans folks. And, it was really hard to hear that the one thing that I'm fighting to do the most is I did the opposite with somebody. And that's really difficult, but I feel a lot of pride today because she was hesitant to tell me. And so I was just like, I'm here for it. I want to hear. I want to learn. I want to know what it was that was your experience, so that we can address it, and so that I can learn and improve. And she did, and she opened up and was extremely vulnerable with me, and I was really appreciative of that. And we just kept kind of talking through it, and I'm hoping that I'll have the chance to have an interview type conversation with her.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'll be able to get her on camera again, but there are some really key things that she brought up about her experience that I was reacting to in a way that she interpreted as being very negative and in fact gatekeeping, which is just heartbreaking because I am totally against that. So I was, like I said, I was just proud of the ability to accept that I had made a mistake and try and learn what it was and how I can and fix it. And yeah, it was a very interesting thing to have gone through today and to be able to talk about here on the show, like you're saying, those moments where you can kind of take a step back and look at it and allow yourself to be wrong and to learn and to be curious and explore and find a better way.
You're human. We're human. That's the big thing. Is relationships are human, and we're going to make loads of mistakes. It is in our humanity of connecting and being willing to talk. And right there, right, reaching out and talking to her and connecting with her, and for her to be able to come forward and say, "Hey, I've got this issue." That's a big deal, and for you to be able to accept that, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So, because you're human, we're human, full of mistakes.
Yeah, and I think I was able to make some good clarifications about what drove my reaction. She was, and I don't really specifically remember that she was using a term to identify herself, and I didn't. I guess I didn't understand it, and I recoiled against that term because it's something that I hold a lot of pain. It holds a lot
Yeah.
of pain for me, and a lot of the shame and self-loathing. And so
Yeah.
I was able to talk with her and explain that it wasn't, it was a recoiling at that word and a reflection of my own pain, not a negative reflection of your identity and how you see yourself. So it was a good conversation. It's hard, isn't it, Kari? It's very hard. But it's great when you're given that opportunity to talk to the person. And sometimes it's like I always say in transition, it's all about patience. It took her over a year to come back and confront me and express what she needed to, and we were able to work through it in great part. And I think we'll be able to work through it to a resolution for both of us. And it's just beautiful. It's so beautiful. But it took patience for her to get there. It took time. Danny makes the comment, Justice, you are so much more than you think you are. We all see it.
Thank you.
Shai asks, how did you come out in fear of anyone trying to take your kids over being you? Like, yeah, the big thought in coming out is that you will lose your kids. I've heard of it where the spouse gets custody and disappears. How was that process for you? And how did you choose yourself over that fear?
I was terrified of it. Just absolutely terrified of it. I love my kids so much, but I had a choice. It was either I wasn't going to make it. It was every night that I was wanting and wishing death, and it was either I step forward and I move forward in this, and I accept myself, and they have mother and a relationship with someone, or even if they don't have that and they get yanked away from me, they at least have that, versus having to go through loss of a parent due to suicide. And that's something that's really hard to talk about.
Yeah.
When I told the kids, they accepted it very well. They jumped right into it. They were really much right there with us. But there was a lot of fear. And some of family members, I don't want to get into details, but some family members may have made those same threats to both of us after Erica said that she was going to stay with me and that they were going to threaten legal action and try and actually do that. Which is one of the reasons I'm very thankful for living in Minnesota, because I have a system and protections at the state level that protect me and have some stuff on the books to protect us in those areas. But we moved from Oklahoma to Minnesota, and part of the reason we moved to Minnesota was because it was before I transitioned, but it was literally because of trying to make a better place. because we knew the problems in Oklahoma. And looking back, if there was any place for me to transition, it was Minnesota. Because, born in Utah, went to college in Wyoming, pastored in Nebraska, formed Tears of the Patriots in Idaho, moved to Oklahoma. All those states are not very accepting of trans individuals. But to transition in Minnesota has been a blessing in many ways, even though things have been very difficult in others. I hope that answers your question, Chai. I can talk to you more personally, but I don't want to.
Danny makes the comment, you give us so much love being here. She's talking about the mod meetings. She says, are you kidding me? You give us so much love being there. Your being there makes us all stronger and more loved.
It means those mod meetings mean a lot. So I didn't really get into this yet, but a good friend of mine the other day, we were having a conversation. They said they might be watching, so they may be. And if so, this conversation is a little bit for you and for me and for all of us. My parents, being fundamentalist, are Christian. We follow very much. My father was a militia member, and when the crash of 2008 happened, I was being a quote unquote good Christian nationalist, and I founded Tears of the Patriots. Tears of the Patriots was an organization was a Tea Party group that turned into a radical group, sort of. We would do some exercises. I ran several seminars on constitutional studies. We talked about a lot of things, getting people into politics and elected. We talked about some very scary stuff. And when I transitioned, my background and my history for where I came from created a lot of scary stuff for me to transition. And I had some real concerns. My partner had some real concerns. We don't give our house address to people. We use P.O. boxes everywhere because of those concerns. Damn phone. Sorry. When you're dealing with these type of stuff, and you're looking at where we're currently at with our political movements and the political structures, there is a lot of fear. And remembering where I came from and some of the people that I knew and how smart they were and how intelligent. My father was a Christian Science, young earth creationist, but my father was also the person who designed the shaker system for Boeing, the thing to test to make sure nuclear missiles didn't explode during sonic booms. That's my father. Brilliant individual, brilliant man, but a young earth creation scientist. And why those mod meetings mean so much to me is because of what it entails for connection. So I can embrace the fear of what is happening in society. Transistence hits a lot of the negative. You guys hit a lot of the stories. And then there's a lot of stuff underneath the covers that are even scarier that are happening. And that's my past. And that's a lot of other people's past as well. And it leaves us terrified sometimes at night, realizing what that actually may mean going forward. Mm-hmm. But what the mods meetings mean to me is not only do I get a relationship and a connection with people in a way that I can grow, but I can actually do something. It's why Transverse means something. It's why it's so fucking important. It's why it's so important. Because transgender community make up, at most, if you look at the gender diverse community in survey data, at most you might hit 9% of the general populace. Trans individuals who step out and do transitioning is anywhere between 0.5 to 3%, depending on the survey data that you get to handle that stuff, right? And usually it's actually underneath the 1%, depending on where you're getting those numbers. There is no way, no matter how much I do by going and hiding in a bunker, there's no way I can do anything with arming myself, militia, weapon training, any of that stuff that will actually defend me or protect my family. What will defend and protect my family is the time that I invest with the Transverse. Because what it does is it builds family. It builds connection. And it changes the narrative around the people that you're working with. You are taking the zeitgeist. So the dinner conversation is something that I hold very dear. And the dinner conversation is the concept of when you're in a coffee house and you have all these voices around you. There's this rumbling, there's this din, there's this underlying narrative that's just you can hear it. It changes your mind. It changes the flow. You're talking about a sentiment, but because of the sentiment of the room, it changes the what you talk about and how you talk about it. You hear words, you pick up things. When we amplify trans voices and when we amplify minority voices and we connect with them and we build relationships and we get their voices out there, you're changing the underlying zeitgeist. And we've seen it. We put internet into rural towns in Minnesota and they become more diverse. People come out of the closet. They get connections literally just by putting internet in those areas. When you amplify trans identities and trans voices, we make it safer and we build safe harbors for the trans community. Secular North's original goal was to build a mecca of sorts of inclusion and connection in the Minneapolis area, an area where I could start kind of a way of working relationships. And so I started working with nonprofits and I started working with all these things. Why? Because we can amplify their voices. We can build connections in a way that we can draw that. And that is what the Transverse does. And that is why what Danny does is so important. Because she's built a family within a family. The mods are a family of connections and relationships. And I know I can always turn to them and I can have talks. So that's why what Danny does is so important, because it gives you the security, the foundation for you to do what you do, which is amplify the voices of other trans individuals, which then changes the way the zeitgeist and the underlying dinner conversation functions, which then builds a better and safer world. And that's what we're after with what we're doing. Sorry, that was a really long tangent.
It was sort of a tangent, but it was sort of a strong advertisement for the Transverse. So we'll definitely get some good clips out of that. I'm sure that we'll use, or at least as the basis for a script. I love it. And I appreciate that. And I really, like I said, I hate when things turn and become about me. But you know, as a person that's so core to the Transverse, it's impossible for us to sit and talk and not get into that kind of stuff. But I love the perspective that you have and what you see in this. And when you get excited about things and say, this is what the Transverse does, and it's just like, yes, that's what I'm trying to do. It's beautiful to see when the intended message and the intent of the action is what's being received and seen from the outside. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, we're in our own bubble. Like I'm talking into a camera a lot of the time. And so I have no perspective on what's actually getting out there. And it's beautiful to me to hear that what's getting out is what's intended. Most of the time. Kari asks, can you tell us about your pendant? And I'd love to hear about if there's something particular about your earrings as well.
These earrings are fun. These are my fun earrings. My partner and we got them at the Pride Days here in Minneapolis. I love them. They're nice. I wore them. I thought about wearing my other ones, which I should have. Those ones have a little bit more meaning. This, though, is a tree of life. My partner gave it to me. It was actually on my birthday. So I started transitioning HRT when I turned 38. So on the very day that I turned 38, on my birthday, I started HRT. And so this was my birthday present. And so it has significant meaning to me because it's the one that It's our connection. I have those earrings, not these earrings, but the Tree of Life earrings, and it connects between the two of us.
Trying to scribble some notes here.
Oh, I could talk all day long about the dinner conversation.
I'll do some math later. Mimi asked a fun question, but let's see. Let's get through everybody else's first. Danny asks, do you see now where you fit in with the community and how much you are loved by us?
Well, of course. I love being with the community, and I love connecting with each and every one of you. And I hope that I can be that crazy person that just jumps all over the place doing everything.
I love that one of our early conversations was about how busy you were with family and job and different things you were doing, and how you weren't really going to have a lot of time for the Transverse, but you were going to do everything you could. And it's just like, I get so many messages from you and so many reports on all the great things that you're doing. And it's just like, where are you finding time for this?
Well, I aligned Secular North with. So this was the great thing. So I started Secular North 3 years ago to try and make us a world that we could have connections, inclusions, where I could feel safe, where we could have all these things. And I found the alignment with the Transverse. I just had my meeting with my rest of my Secular North. Transverse, and what Transverse goal was and what Secular North's goal is almost exactly the same. And by working together and by me pouring more of my time and investment over into the Transverse, I can still hit my goals. And I can take the resources that Secular North has, and we can start to see how that we move the goals forward together as a team. And ends up, I like having fun over here. So,
But I'm just glad that you found that the family and the place, and there. This is something that I had always envisioned would be a draw to the Transverse of like, we have the infrastructure, we have the people, we have the ability to make things happen. So that you don't have to start something, you don't have to run something, you can come be part of what we've got. And it just really helps both of us. Like, you don't have to worry about the business stuff or some of the infrastructure, and we get the benefit of having the great people that are pushing us in different directions and moving other projects forward. So it's what I'd hoped would happen, and I'm so happy to hear that it's working.
well, I'll tell
Evil
you.
plan.
Well, it is absolutely. So I was going the same way. So what I did is I went to all the nonprofits in the Minneapolis area and I started working with them. I designed all their infrastructure and all the stuff that I'm now doing for all of you all. I gave to a lot of the nonprofits in our area. The thing that I ran into was most of the established nonprofits are run by an older generation group of individuals that are white, cis males. And I love all of them dearly. They struggle to see direction. And what ended up happening is I spun my wheels for mostly 3 years. I've created in the last 3 years over 800 videos I've produced. And streams across the board. I handled and maintained for a while there. Last year, I was doing 8 to 9 shows a week on my own. And it was getting nowhere, mainly because what I was doing is I was relying on all the established groups, and they were stuck in their molds, and I could not break out. What I found with the Transverse and what Jay does, and Jay and I have been trying to do the Keep Living stuff for a while, and we've been doing some really great stuff. What I found with the Transverse, though, was a group of people that were like, let's try this, and not spend 50 hours in a meeting a week arguing about what the color of the shed is going to be. the bike shed. That's a tech term. But right, instead of talking about what the carpet's going to be, it's like, okay, let's see, how can we move forward? Okay, what works? What doesn't work? What's broken? Let's fix that thing that's broken. Let's go, 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 go. Right.
Mhm.
And I found a team of people that are excited. I had that team with my core, but it was three of us, and we were doing an immense amount of work. But now I have a team to work with, and I'm excited because they actually are thankful for some of the stuff I'm doing, and it means something.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. That's so great. Um, Dana asks, well, Dana asks, Justice, you are amazing and come across as a force of nature with boundless energy. How do you keep from pushing yourself too hard and exhausting yourself? Have you found that balance yet?
No. Usually I burn out. Actually, so I find the things that I'm passionate about, and then find the people to work with. What I found that energizes me the most is connection and working with people and seeing how we can make things better. When you have family that can relate with you and go get a meal with and talk with and share hurts and pain, you can work through a lot of stuff. And what's there to burn out when everyone else is burning with you, right? There's a difference.
Yeah.
So when you ask me, do I burn out? Yeah, I do, because I don't know how to say no to anything. That was one of my first conversations with Charlotte is, hey, Charlotte, I will do almost everything, but just guess what I won't do is I probably will not say no, especially when I need to.
That's why, yeah, I've just made sure never to ask you for anything. And there's just all the things. You're always asking me for things like I need you to do this. I need you to do this. Can you approve this? And it's just like I'm trying to catch up to you, and it's like I'm not going to assign you a damn thing. Like you're already doing too much. It's perfect.
Well, I think that's the power of working together as a team, right? When you're working together as a team, you're running together. And sure, I'm going to trip over things, and you and I are going to trip over each other. And I'm going to do dumb shit and not mean to hurt anyone, but I am. And you guys are going to call me on it, and we're going to work together because it's a family.
Mhm.
One family means that we work together, we fight together, we cry together, and we move forward together in loving relationship for all of us.
Mhm. And it's totally behind the scenes, but my strongest beliefs is in empowering the people to do their thing, to do the thing. This is all happening because I was just like, I want to do something, and I'm just going to do it and see what it happens. And I want to make sure that we get people in, we put them in a position, we make sure it fits for them, and it's clearly defined. And then it's like, okay, you know what you're doing, everything, we're cool. All right, go. Like do your thing and let's just see what happens. I I'm not about micromanaging or like looking over someone's shoulder to be like, how are you doing that? And is it, it's like, the vision, what we're trying to accomplish. We trust you, we believe in you. Go do the thing the way you feel it should be done. And yeah, I mean that's part of why we're reforming as a nonprofit. Is there was a need to reevaluate the structure of our organization, and it's like, Charlotte, you're going to be in charge of running the business. What is the business that you want to run? As long as I get to interject my ideas and drive the vision of where we go, you're doing the day-to-day of running the business. What's the business you want to run? And I love having an organization like that.
And that's where infrastructure becomes so important. The power of your voice and Jay's voice is immensely valuable, but only when it's backed by a foundation that allows you to explore and be curious. Here's the thing: if you go out and you try and just jump forward and do things, but you don't have a foundation behind you, you fall, and we're not able to catch you, and we're not able to do things with you. But that's what Charlotte is stepping forward and doing. She's putting the energy, she's putting the time, she's looking at what is the things that we do to build the individual foundations, to allow us to then use J to use, as I use J with Secular North, and I give the J the foundation with Secular North and Keep Living, and Charlotte gives you the foundation with what you're doing out in the public, to spearhead and to run forward as fast as you can. And you know that you have a team that will catch you when things happen. When you break, you have a team that will make sure that you're caught, that the stuff gets out to the right places, and that's where it's so important for the work that not only Charlotte does, but what Danny does and what everyone else does, as well. Everyone sees M and the rest of the people on the shows. It's that background that allows them to be able to shine so brilliantly with the words and the poetry that they have in their conversations with each and every person out there. Um, at least that's what I hold to very strongly. Having that infrastructure allows you to be brave.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I appreciate having all of that foundation and the people behind what I'm doing, so that yeah, we can step out and do the bigger, bolder things that I envision with confidence. One of the things that's really difficult for me as trying to come in and take a leadership role, which is something I never thought I'd see myself in, is admitting those times when I'm not strong and I need help.
It's a puppy.
Trying to keep a dog from peeing on my stuff. But it becomes really hard to find that balance of like leadership and inspiration and all that of your staff and then being open and honest of when you're really struggling. And there are days when I struggle to believe in myself and what we're doing. And it's just like, there's no way that's good for the team, but I do need to open up and share what's really going on with me. And, well, how did you deal with that with Secular North? While I go see if I can get this dog to go outside and go potty.
Okay, yeah, catch you. So for what we did with Secular North, and I don't understand it all very much and how we do it. When it comes down to it, is finding family and finding relationships. Both Delaney and Jacob, and I don't know if they're in chat or not. They very well likely could be, and I hope so, because they're amazing individuals. Were an immense support to me. And knowing that I could rely on them when things go south, when things are there. But mainly, they know very well that I didn't like to tell them when I was struggling and when I was hurting. I like to hide things. I like to keep myself looking like I am like the superhero who can do, every video under the sun, make every bit of the technological advancements, and change the world in my own power. But the truth is, every time I've done that, it has fallen so flat and failed so much. What I found is that family, that connection. And I think that's what we have here. Because when you can be vulnerable and they love you for it, it allows you to be honest and allows you to be connected. And that's why I think it's so important that we have family and connection with this stuff. It's not just a business here. Sure, we're trying to structure it as a business, but it's a family that will hold you and knows, hey, guess what? M's human. Mm-hmm. I'm human. We're going to all make some really bad mistakes. And there, likelihood, Transverse is probably going to go through some pretty nasty issues in the future. We touch a community that is already despised and has some very serious problems. We're going to get hit with our own controversies. Mm-hmm. And they're going to hit us hard. And that's where family comes together, willing to call each other out on our bullshit, but willing also to love us and to touch and to take care of us and to be there for you. And so that's kind of what you have to fall into, is knowing that you have a family there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I never want to give the impression that what is happening in that, when I bring that up, is an issue of trust of the family and the support of the family. It's purely the belief in my role and what the people that work with me and for me need. And it's just so easy to fall into that of like they need that strong, perfect, has all the answers person.
Yeah.
And it's not real, and I think everybody knows it's real, but then you just worry about like if I express something, how is that going to land? What's it going to do?
Yep.
Is it going to deflate people or deflate their trust in what we're doing? And I think there's part of it where you do have to reserve some of those things. You have to hide some of that, and you have to keep that to yourself. And it's finding that balance of like, where's the vulnerability I can share, and where are the things that are like it's just not good for the company, for the organization.
I think that's where you find the person that you can share with, right? And that doesn't have to be someone at the company. That can be someone that you're working with, right? Because those things will eat you alive if you let them.
Mhm.
I mean, I built all my hardware. Like, I don't trying to find the one that I built, but I built an RTMP server. I've used to run all my stuff out of my own cloud systems. I tried to build literally everything, an entire media company from the ground up, software included. That's how ridiculous I can be. And realizing that I can't do that is number one, right? Sure, we can create some crazy stuff, but that doesn't really work. Um, so when you talk about things, right, there are those people that you can be a lot more open with. And there are those people times when you can't be that open.
Yeah.
There's that level of vulnerability in this, the level of connection. Delaney and Jacob, I can be completely open and honest with at Secular North. There are many other people that I can't be fully open and honest because I don't have that relationship. And it's not a trust factor. It's what are we trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
How is that impression going to be? But it is a struggle, right? Because we're trying to change the world, and someone's going to use any words you say as a possible controversy point.
Yeah. Well, that's why it was so important to have the partners, the Transverse sisters, the two that have been with me the whole time putting this together. That yeah, we've had some rough meetings. We've had some very emotional things, and it's like we can truly share anything, and be completely vulnerable, without any fear that it is going to affect the performance of anybody else. And their belief in what we're doing. All right, I'm going to move on from this. um, Little Rain asks, tell us about the meaning of some of the posters on your wall, the things that you've got, the artwork you've got behind you.
Sure. So let's see. The trans flag, which I'm now covering,
Mm-hmm.
is a piece of art that my daughter made.
Cute.
She made for me, and I apologize, the light's a little bright, so let's drop that just a teeny bit. But the more important one is, while she did that one when I first came out. That was like right away that month. She made that one for me, and then on my birthday, she made the portrait that's in the middle.
Mm.
She's about to turn 11 next month, and they are absolutely amazing. They just totally blow me away with their art. That's clay. The whole walls and everything is a mixture of clay and paint.
Hmm.
And so then the portrait, my partner gave me that. A good friend of ours down in Oklahoma. Now she's in Texas. She is an amazing artist. Amy Coker, absolutely look her up. She is absolutely fabulous with the stuff that they do. Amy Coker is the one who drew that, and she drew that completely out of red. Everything in that is some shade of red.
Hmm.
She took basically augmentations of purple and pink, and totally variant grades the whole the way through.
Huh. How fun.
And it's called Portrait of, I'm trying to remember. I think it's Portrait of Self is what it was, but it was a coming to understand what you are, who you are inside, and that understanding of that view out as it exposes and comes out. And it's a special one made between Erica and Amy, putting that together
Nice.
for me. Mm-hmm.
And what's the significance of the they were talking about Frozen, the Frozen poster there.
Frozen was a really good movie. That was the second one. Was the one that really tied both my partner and I well together. That painting is called The Gradient of Self.
Oh,
By
okay.
the way, The Gradient of Self, and it was on the rituals that make us feel safe and grounded, that take us from our youth to who we are now, as we find and discover who we are. As to Frozen, that whole connection, right, is one finds oneself, but also leaves their sister off on the side, right, and then also struggles. How do you still maintain that connection as they both find themselves in different periods of sadness and connection? And that Frozen 2 really did strike a curve, so that's why it's up there. Both my partner and I, we enjoyed the movie together, and especially right when I was right in the middle of the transitioning phase and that came out, I watched that and it really kind of connected with me pretty strongly, because we were in this middle of these fights and these arguments of how do we actually stay connected? Are we going to get separated?
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen? How do we fight through this? Because I'm screaming ahead, I've got to do this, else I'm going to die, right? Type concept, right? You're trying to struggle with this whole thing. Am I leaving her in the dirt? So. Mm-hmm.
Mimi asked the question: Does that one qualify as your favorite movie, or do you have another one that's a favorite?
Shoot. Favorite movies are a hard thing. There's a lot of good movies out there. I do enjoy that one. I do enjoy a lot of the kid ones. I do that with a lot of watching with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm definitely Star Wars. Star Trek is absolute.
Okay.
I'm Star Trek all the way over Star Wars, but Star Wars is still very good.
Okay.
Lord of the Rings.
Good save there. Good save. Oh crap, what was I gonna say? Oh, I love those. I love those when you have that with a partner, where you have like the one movie that for some reason really connects with you, for you. There wasn't something as deep for us as, you know, Frozen is for y'all, but with my ex, it was Wall-E.
Yeah.
The just the romantic nature of Wall-E was, it was very sweet. We love that one.
Yeah.
Oh, and Kari is pointing out your TARDIS up there on the top shelf.
Mm-hmm.
And is there other memorabilia from Doctor Who in the background?
I'm sure there is somewhere. There's also Mouse Guard. I don't know if Dana is still here, but she should be able to see the Mouse Guard figurines that I made up there. I make a lot of my stuff, so.
Oh, fun.
Dana would know. Mouse Guard's a great. Actually, they can't see, can they? Because of the way the trim is.
Oh, up on the top?
Yeah.
Oh,
there
nice.
you go.
Midvani says, love the message of Frozen, and in 2, love the Sami cultural influence.
Mm-hmm.
Am I pronouncing that right? The Sami? Sami? I don't know. Probably not. Oh, Kari is pulling out. I love the reference. Wall-E, the descendant of number 5. Oh, the memes that were huge in my family for a long time. No disassemble was a big one. That stayed in that was something that we used regularly a lot when I was a kid. Dana says, I have a friend who's a huge fan and got me into Mouse Guard.
Yeah.
I think that's it for our questions. Jen Giggles had asked, who is your found family? I think you've talked about that. Is there anybody else that you'd like to point out and shout out to as
Jen
found family?
Giggles. A lot of the people that I work with around the secular North, First Unitarian Society, JX Hooper has totally included. the freedom folks, all of them have just really just are very nice and embracing and connecting, which is so glad I'm there kind of connecting these communities together. So